Okay, welcome to a pivotal episode of Browns Bites. The Browns obviously had their bye this week, and so did I, for reasons I didn't necessarily expect to happen, but here we are. But before I get into all of that, the one thing, this hasn't been a great week for me, but the one thing that I was genuinely super excited about, even though it literally happened the day after I lost my job, was brief, or 2 days. No, it was one day. Wednesday, finalizing her adoption. I know how much of a big deal that was for Bree. I know how difficult this has been, not only just the elements that you have to deal with and everything with it, the stress that it puts on, somebody who didn't have a choice in the matter, and just everything you've navigated. I know this is a huge relief, so I'm super happy for you on that front.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, Pete and I were just chatting before, and we both had very different bye weeks, which is interesting how everything fell during the Browns bye week for us. But yeah, I haven't been super open, I guess, about our foster care journey as much. Just online, I know I've shared a couple of tidbits, but even in the podcast, for obvious reasons, this is a podcast about the Cleveland Browns / sports scene. However, it is just, I think for me, Pete, my perspective has just really changed ever since entering this space overall. And I've gotten to a place where this is why I just don't let the Cleveland Browns impact me just
Sure.
in life in general. It has really just changed my mindset overall of what I'm going to let make me angry or upset or happy or mad. It's an outlet and a release for me, but it can't be any more than that. And going through this whole process, we got licensed in 2021, so right after the pandemic, still really in the midst of it. And we had a placement that reunified, and that's what foster care is. It is meant to bring families back together and to help heal them. And so while it is very, very hard to have a child in your home and you get very attached to them and you fall deeply in love with them and you spend every day, every night with them, trying to help them through all of it. And then, you send them back to their family, and it's very hard to deal with. But at the end of the day, like that is the goal. And so a year ago, when we had received a phone call for this little girl, I still don't really want to say her name overall. I mean, if you follow me on social media channels personally, you will know, but I still want to keep her privacy a little bit protected. But she was placed with us a year ago at age 2, and I don't want to share her story because it's really not mine to tell. But all I will say is that we only anticipated having her for a couple of months. We took the phone call. We said yes, even though we thought we were going to be a bridge into getting her back to a family friend, and we knew that it would be really difficult because even after having a child for a month or 2 months, you start to develop that bond and that relationship, and the child is really kind of doing the same thing. And there were some challenges and some issues, and there were people making decisions that at the time felt like the right decisions. And so we were gearing up and preparing for, again, having another child leave our home and doing whatever we could to support the family. And then all of a sudden, everything changed, as is with foster care. The one thing that I have learned throughout the entire process, and it hasn't been long, it's that as soon as you were told something, the next day it could be completely different. And so I was pretty mum about sharing our adoption because of that, because there just is never really, nothing is official until the judge signs off on it. So we actually were told that we were going to be, that the case was moving towards adoption last December. And again, like I sat with that for a very long period of time, and people would constantly ask me about it. And so officially we were matched with her. I think it was around May. And then from that point on, there's a bunch of paperwork and a bunch of things that happen in between that time and an actual court date. And the interesting thing is that the courts are so backed up. I guess as expected, this particular judge, who was amazing, by the way, he only does adoptions on a certain day. And we filed for the court date back in July, and it happened to be in October. And so, yeah, it was a huge relief, a just kind of just being able to share her and to share our happiness, her happiness, to be able to show her face to people, to not have all the rules that goes into being a foster parent. You know, there are workers in and out of your house, at least once a month. There is rules that we had to follow that, and I'm saying this, it's not an inconvenience. It is something that we signed up for, that we knew very much was part of the foster care journey. But now she is our child. We can treat her like her older two siblings, and whatever that means. But, you know, Pete, as happy as we are throughout all of this, it is such a complicated feeling, because with our celebration comes deep loss for this child's first family. And that was not lost on me or lost on us, that yes, it is such an exciting time for us and to be her permanent family. And we feel so very blessed to provide that for her. She deserves it. Every child deserves a family. I still understand that this celebration comes with a mourning from her first family. And so I will just leave it at that. I will say that we are very open. There is a relationship established with her first family. It is something that I feel very passionate about keeping, whatever that relationship looks like, as long as it is safe and healthy for the child. And the research that I've done with fellow adoptees have talked about that importance, and making sure that they know where they came from, they know their background, they know their story, they are connected by that. So yes, that was a lot. I apologize. That was a lot. I just wanted to make sure people understood. And I got a lot of questions after, and I had a few people reach out to me privately. And if you were listening to this and you have any type of interest of entering this foster care space or adoption space, please reach out to me. If there is one person that we could inspire to sign up for this, all of it would be worth it.
Well, you have a lot of people, a lot of fans on Twitter in this, you know, not just in general, but who are in this with you, like in the foster parent realm, which I'm sure means a lot. And, you know, just you and I speaking about this, I know how much the weight stays with you, as far as you understand that you are taking this child and what that means to someone else.
And it's like parenting a child is hard just overall, but parenting a child from a trauma background is also something that has been a very eye-opening experience, because it's easy to think that a newborn baby would not experience any type of trauma, right? If they were raised in an adoptive family's home. And that is not her background, by the way. Again, I don't really want to share it, but I will just say this: trauma and adoption really go hand in hand, regardless of what age or stage you were to adopt a child. There are just a lot of very complex needs and issues. And if you are interested in this, I would highly encourage you to do some research on this. There are a couple of books that I read just about the impact of trauma, what it does to the brain, and therefore what it does to the body. I don't want to screw up his name. There's a psychologist. It's either Bryce Perry or Bruce Perry. I'm screwing that up, but his book that I read was just eye-opening. And there are a couple of others that if you were interested in that type of stuff, I could shoot you a note on what they are. Disturbing in a way, but also just in learning different parenting styles and how to parent differently. And honestly, it's helped us just figure out how to parent our older two, that are all like, kids are just different. They respond differently. And so it's been a, I think overall, we've grown through all of this. So that's my piece, Pete.
Yeah. And that's why this is awesome. That this was finally done, and the safeguards are in place for a reason, but you finally earned the right to sort of be able to be whole, which is what everyone needs in this scenario. So with that, I've gotten, it's been a bittersweet week. Obviously, I would wish I still had my job, but the outpouring of support has been overwhelming, as I said on Twitter, and I mean that. And every email I've gotten or direct message I've responded to, or so for people who are asking, you know, for sort of context or whatever. In fact, there are people who assume that there's some other shoe to drop, that there's more to the story or whatever. I wish it was more interesting than that. So for me, the Monday I got in terms of a fake quote about Baker allegedly said by Baker Mayfield. I wrote an article, wasn't really trashing him so much as basically saying that my hope was that Mayfield would sort of allow, like, more or less sort of allow Browns fans and everyone else to sort of remember him for the very many good things he did here. He's on any number of record books for this team, which is, a testament to the lack of quarterbacks they've had, and published that, realized my mistake, unpublished it, whatever. Unfortunately, that still goes out to their syndications and whatever else the deal, the various contracts that SI has done, which is great for the most part, but obviously wasn't great in this situation. So, I try to do what I can to sort of stop it, whatever. I wrote other things that day and went about my day. And then I got an email talking about potentially being aware of the situation and then some other steps that were possibly going to be taken. And then ultimately, I didn't hear anything back until I just got a notification about a meeting the following day, which I immediately took was, it's not good. I didn't think it was good in the first place. And wasn't sure what I was going to expect. I did absolutely think it was a possibility that I would get terminated, but I was hoping it wouldn't be that way. So went about my day, whatever. Tuesday, the day it happened was just a weird day. I woke up. Well, I should say woke up. I hadn't really slept in a while. I was stressed out already. Had to go to two different Lowe's to get stuff for the contract to finish the work he'd been doing on my house. So I get that done. I get home, and then I have this meeting. They and from their perspective, they were very the management, and I didn't speak to SI management. I speak to the people that deal with Fan Nation and whatever. And they told me that, like, SI's main concern was reputation, and they weren't willing to take that hit. To provide some context to that, when I started 4 years ago, I started actually before the company bought SI and then sort of evolved into what it's evolved into. And initially, they had some issues with posting of false stories or inaccurate stories or whatever, and they sort of had to clean it up a little bit. And they fought a battle in terms of reputation, which I was there. I remember it. But here's the thing, like, I only remember it because it was brought up. Like, it's been a long enough time where I was like, I get it, but at the same time, I'm sort of like, I don't know how many other people remember that, other than if I'm bringing it up to you and you're going, oh yeah, maybe that happened or whatever. So from my perspective, it was sort of like, all right. I mean, it's been a while. Again, I thought it was a possibility. And the arrangement you have when you do this is you set up an LLC and then you sign an agreement to, you're essentially a vendor at that point. And it has advantages in terms of being very independent. And ultimately, that same independence and the fact that you are a vendor makes it very easy for them to be like, here's a thing to sign, we're done. If you don't sign it, blah, 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 legal, whatever. I was like, fine, whatever, I'll sign it. So that's how that happened. That's literally it. And the rest, this is happening as the dude is finishing up my house.
Pete, stop it.
So I'm sitting here freaking out in my head as he's trying to get his stuff done. And then eventually, it does get done. He did a great job and whatever. And that gets done. And like, I'm more or less in a state of, I guess shock, I suppose.
Yeah.
More than anything. Like, because that's how quick it was. It was just like, hey, you're employed and now you're not.
So wait, can I ask you a couple of questions if you are allowed to answer them, just for the listeners? So I guess to go back to Monday, could I tell you that I also got by that same tweet on Sunday night? I sent it to my family group chat.
As did some other people I know.
And here's the thing about it. I actually have seen that account before and know that it is I don't even know what you want to call it, a parody. It's actually terrible that people like do this and garner these interactions, and it is seen by a lot of people. But I still like read it and didn't think twice to like even confirm like who it was coming from. So step one. Step two, at what point, Pete, did you realize that you got on that Monday? Like right away, almost immediately?
No, it was initial reaction. I think it was up 20 minutes.
Okay. So even so, realization happens. At that point, you take everything down, but like you said, the damage is already done.
It stays with the syndicated website,
right.
Unfortunately. So that's
then you were also given direction to not do anything.
Right. Like originally it was, that part I don't want to get into too much, but ultimately I was sort of, told, wait, we're going to figure it out. I was perfectly prepared to write a retraction.
Okay.
Take the hit, whatever.
I was wondering about that.
That was not an option that was ultimately given to me, which again, I am not here to bash SI or anyone else or Fan Nation or anyone else. Like it's 100% on me. I didn't do what I was supposed to do.
You posted that like I think the next day, like you took full accountability for it in like your note or that same night, which is respectable.
Right.
Like what more can you do?
Yeah, I mean that's unfortunately about it. So it's on me 100%. Like I could, there was no other place to put it. So obviously I get let go, and now the frustrating part on any number of levels, but the most frustrating part for me is that unfortunately that also meant that the people I had hired, because again I'm an independent entity in that point, are my hires. It's not like SI hired them. I did, because again I'm a vendor at that point. Everything is done through me. So again, that's the power I have, the independence I have, but it's a double-edged sword in that regard. So that part was obviously a huge bummer for me, because I believe in the people I had hired. I'm really saddened by the fact that they don't have a home at this point. They lose that income as much as I did. Now, and I'm more than happy to recommend them. Like I think Abby Mueller's a really talented video creator person, from somebody who was just doing podcasts and sort of feeling her way out around the space to now feels like somebody who feels like she's good at what she does. And I fully agree. I think she's a person who's just going to get better and better with more reps. I could take a little bit of credit for some of the things I've tried to help her do, but ultimately it's her. She's very talented, and more than anything, it was just telling her to just do it, believe in what you do, believe in what you're doing, and just sort of lean into it. And hopefully she will be able to continue to do that. Damon Wolf is somebody I had only hired a couple months ago because I had to replace somebody else who had left for a bigger, better job. And now, he's somebody who's never written in this space before and has decided he's going to do a newsletter and try to build his own thing, which is awesome. I'm happy that like he's trying that. But again, I hate the fact that he had to lose that because of me. Matt Wilson, who's mostly did like some game, certainly knows a lot about offensive line, defensive line stuff, because he's played it, he's coached it, does a lot of keys to the game type stuff. So he's hopefully going to find somewhere else. But I think he's somebody else who got better as a writer over the course of the stay. And then Noah Weiskopf, who's very young, still in college, did some really good interviews and some work for me that I thought was incredible, especially at that age. Did the work in terms of tracking down people and making it work in terms of a couple of interviews targeted to like Jordan Kunashik and Jakeem Grant with his recovery and some of this stuff. So that stuff kills me that I can't do that. But I'm proud of the fact that those people want to continue working the space, because ultimately that's great. I'm also really proud of the fact that, or I should say, one of the thing I'm probably the most proud of in what I was able to do there was to hire people who then got real jobs elsewhere or within the company. So I had a guy named Sean Stevenson work for me for a little while. Then he went to work for the Browns for a minute. I think he's at Virginia Tech in a communications role. So obviously very proud of him for that. Evan Crowell still works at SI. He just runs a couple college sites, and he was a kid who started working for me when he was in high school. but he's like a prodigy. I can't take any credit for him. He's just really, really good. But he's like 19 and runs 2 websites, and he's really good. And then Brandon Little, who had worked for me for the most of that 4-year period and had recently taken another job with the company, running as an editor for A to Z. He put a lot of his own blood, sweat, and tears into the website, and just worked really hard, believed in what we were doing, and helped grow it. So I'm super proud of those people for being able to do that. And like, if people are looking for some of the people I had to, I can't employ at this point, I'm happy to recommend any of them for that stuff. So that stuff certainly means a lot to me. And then the other element is the outpourings of support I've gotten, certainly from people like Bree, like Nicole, lots of friends that I've had, made in sort of taking this journey into football and covering the sport and covering the Browns and all that stuff. But then like, I've gotten a lot of emails from people I've never heard of, and I know they're way too technical for my mom. I'm not ruling out Bree's mom for making these, but nevertheless, I was very touched with some of the things people wrote and what it meant to them, and touching on things that were important to me, helping people learn more about the game. And then I got one email from a guy who was like, just really hit on the fact that he loved that I was trying to provide a platform and was passionate about trying to get women into this space. That is something that's super important to me. I obviously get tired of the amount of mediocre white men who cover the sport, being one of them, that you can find any number of those people in this space. And I would love nothing more, if I can accomplish one thing out of being able to do this and sort of being able to provide a platform, which I will miss, is I would like very desperately to eventually see a woman covering sports in a Cleveland radio capacity as a host. It galls me to no end that we have so much content out here, and there's not a single that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm missing it. That there's not a single female host, and not just the point guard who passes it to the men to talk about the sport. I mean, the Cynthia Freulands, the Susie Kolbers, and obviously she was a host, but she was just really smart. Those type of women who just know the sport. And I'm obviously, that was super important to me as far as Abby. That was super important as far as Nicole. And I'm super fortunate with Bree, that every so often I'll get people who like, oh, why don't you just do your own thing? Because I love doing the podcast with Bree. She's awesome. And I'm not good at talking about myself. It's one of many strengths that Bree has. But that stuff is super important to me. And I do mean a lot. It does mean a lot to me. And I've, behind the scenes have supported, podcasts and other things, just saying, look, there's absolutely an audience for women. And I hope you guys push and keep going with it, because there's desperately needing to be a voice. And yes, there are going to be people who are going to say, we need men talk football. I don't, I'm okay with not having them as my audience. I'm more interested in having the audience I have, and the audience we have.
Listen, all these men who think that women can't talk about football because they haven't played the sport, I will officially challenge you in a 40-yard dash, 100% straight up. Let's go. Throwing competition. I'll do that too.
Well, and then
hand size, Pete. I might take the cake on hand size too. I don't know.
Well, but it like it's one of those things where it's like this space is lonely enough in terms of how much you have to do yourself. The last thing you want to do is like sign up for, be like, hey, do you want to do your own podcast by yourself? Not really. That's not the thing I love doing. And obviously, whether it's been Nicole or Bree, like, as much as I love doing the podcast, it's just awesome to be able to like take however much time we take and just be like.
Well, first, I would also like to say that I was in no means trying to replace Nicole, because I also love Nicole and miss her dearly. And I really enjoyed the podcast when you guys had it, which is kind of how we got linked up together again, just based on the two situations we were in. So it ended up all working out. But my goal every podcast episode is to try to get Pete to laugh, because Pete is the Kevin Stefanski of podcasts. Like I needed a little bit more emotion in that, Pete. Wow. I needed like maybe a tear. I don't know, like something. You're pretty stoic.
That's a concerted
Swear
effort in this
word,
case.
anything like, can I
I could
get some
do,
anger?
trust
I
me, I
don't
could do
know.
that. So, like that's the funny part about like this whole thing that happened on Tuesday. I lose my job. I deal with the contractor, and then like it's one of those things where like, what am I going to do? Sit here and do nothing and like feel sorry for myself? Take a personal day? No, I went and coached the high school team I coached with as an assistant. That has been a great outlet in general at times because you know they don't there are kids who will ask me what I do for a living, but I don't go and like broadcast. It doesn't because it doesn't
They
matter.
won't understand anyway.
Well, I mean, so that some will follow the sport enough that they're like they'll pay attention to that stuff. And I know some of them have run into stuff I've done, and that's fine. And they'll be like, some of them will be surprised and be like, hey, "Is this you?" But it's not about it's not about me. It's about them. And in that moment, it was they didn't do anything. And as much as I may have been like hurting in that moment, it allowed me to do something other than ruminate, which I'm terrible at anyway. And just replaying things over and over in my head that weren't going to change or weren't necessarily wrong in the first place. Like it's just one of those things. So, that was valuable in that week as much as like maybe other people would have done it differently. But like I've been at the high school I'm at, this is year 8, 7. It's one of those things I don't broadcast a ton about what I do in coaching.
I was going to say, you don't really talk about that either.
And the reason for that is I don't ever want the perception to be that it's about me. I don't do it for credit as much as I'm endlessly proud of what I've been able to do, but it's more about the kids I've been able to do it for. Like some people know, I coached in quotation, I was technically the defensive line coach, Mike Hall, junior, senior year, when he was at Streetsboro, and now he's a junior at Ohio State. And I'm super proud of that. But like for the most part, you won't see me talk. I won't necessarily tweet about what I think of Mike. I will usually just retweet and other stuff because it's about what he's doing because he's earned it. He's worked really hard for this. And I'm super proud of him. And then at the same point, I've been coaching quarterbacks this is 8th year coaching quarterbacks. This has been a unique year for me because every other year I've had somebody who has played quarterback since, youth or whatever, middle school at the very least. And this year, I had the kid who's playing quarterback for us was a running back last year, has never played quarterback. So that provided a unique challenge. And I'm just ecstatic for what he's been able to do because like he literally came to me at the end of last year and was like, hey, can I try quarterback? It's like, all right, throw a ball. Threw it, looked okay. And then ultimately, I was like, I'll talk it over with the head coach, see what he thinks and all that. And if he's cool with it, I'm fine with it. And what I would tell you is like, yes, there's a certain element of throw the ball and that stuff. But the stuff I looked for in those kids is just that competitiveness, being smart, being, able to sort of, things that don't necessarily jump out at you at quarterback where you may want to see how tall is he, how far can he throw, all that stuff. And the kid I have this year, his brother played for me for 4 years at quarterback, and he's going to eventually end up in Streetsboro's Hall of Fame. This kid, we played what is basically our rival this past Friday. He goes 6 for 6, 217 yards and 5 touchdowns. It's hilarious how that sounds. It was an interesting game. We beat our rival Woodridge 48-16, which is a big deal for him. And it's always entertaining because like I will get when I started coaching his brother as a freshman, his grandma was all over me. It's like, you better be good to this kid and all this stuff. And now I've had this one, and now she's busting his balls about what the older brother did when he was there and those types of things. So anyway, like that's the thing. I don't talk about these things. Not that I'm unwilling or anything. People have asked me privately. Like Jeff Lloyd always wants an update every game, what we did, all that stuff, which is great. I don't bother Bree too much with it. Even though, other than the fact that when we played the Alliance,
yeah, you were close by and didn't even tell me. How dare you? I could have came and watched.
We hosted Alliance. We hosted Alliance, was just down by her. And their incredible quarterback, Zerberg, who's committed to Oklahoma, who is sensational in every way, but we were ultimately able to win in a really exciting fashion.
Right. He was like, I just played right near you, I think. And I was like,
Well,
oh, well, thanks for telling me a day later.
well, that was we were down by you. They were literally, I think, in your by you when we did a 7-on-7 like a joint practice thing with a couple schools, and it was hosted by the high school in your town. And it didn't really occur to me until after the fact.
I think Maddox did that football camp, right? And I like sent you a picture and you're like, oh, that looks familiar. You're like, I think we just practiced there.
So yeah, like again, it's one of these things. The other reason I don't tend to talk about this stuff is because what I always worry about with this is it's not because I'm not trying to bag on anyone or anything, but like what I don't want to get into a situation of is if I tweet about one kid and not tweeting about another kid, does that become, it's a whole other thing.
Well, yeah. And like you said, your players, there's probably some that are like more active on social media than some others. And like that gets really tricky to deal with. I try not to post a lot of personal things about me because there's just psychos on the internet that I have to worry about.
Well, what's funny is like when I started when we, I coached with the head coach at Crestwood for a year, and then we went to Streetsboro, and I used to get a ton of crap the first 2 years because we went 4-6 and 4-6. Like, you must not know anything about the Browns because you're 4-6, you're a 4-6 coach. As like, I didn't hear so much about that when we went 10-0 the following year and won the first playoff game in school history against Nicole's alma mater. She loves when I bring that up.
Oh my gosh, Nicole's catching strays. She can't even defend herself.
And then we went in the COVID year. We went 8-0. And before we're losing the playoffs and all this stuff that was like historic. I don't hear so much about that anymore. But anyway, that's sort of where I'm at. So the natural question people have.
What's next for Pete?
What's next? Which is an interesting question. What I would say is for people who don't necessarily understand how this sort of space works. But if you've paid attention to what's going on with newspapers and a lot of other publications, you're either saying layoffs or any other attempt to cut costs. And I could, if for $8.50 a month, I will tell you exactly what I think of why this is not a good business model for these newspapers and other things, and why I think them cutting costs is actually costing them more money. But anyway, there's not a ton of money in this space. So one of the reasons I was super grateful to have the job I had. And I say that even as much as there were times where I was frustrated naturally, because either the Browns are bad and I hate sort of waking up and sort of feeling like I'm in a battle for trying to talk people off a ledge in terms of firing everybody or moving the team or whatever. I can say that I absolutely love my job every day. And there were no shortage of opportunities for me to feel super grateful to have it and be blessed in that. I'm not religious, but blessed in the fact that, like, for example, when I went to get talking about this work that's been done on my house, I took back leftover planks that didn't get used on my floor, and they're, the guys in there all talking fantasy football, and I didn't say anything. I'm not in there to brag, but it's just, that little feeling of I get to do this all day long, like, is just an awesome feeling. So that part is really, really special to me. But so what you end up with in terms of this job market is there's only so much money to go around. And then it becomes a question of, is it possible to go be full-time, part-time, or hobby that maybe gets you a couple extra bucks? That is sort of the question I'm facing in terms of what's realistic in that part. And obviously that is through the lens of if I was to sign on and write for another outlet. The other option is to sort of do my own thing, which is obviously what Damon Wolf is doing, which would involve doing something like potentially Substack or some other, Patreon or whatever. Again, to reiterate, in terms of the setup I had with SI allowed me a lot of independence. So what does that mean? It means the YouTube channel, I own that. The Facebook page, I own that too. And the podcast, Bree and I own that. So there was never, even though I lose that big platform, like all the infrastructure stuff is mine / ours. So theoretically, I could lean into YouTube and do more stuff on there. That's always been something I've been sort of meaning to get to in terms of just being able to sort of post up live content and stuff like that. I just hadn't gotten to it yet for any number of reasons, putting it off, procrastinating. I don't necessarily love the idea of doing that, but if that's what I need to do, that's fine. And then you get into a conversation of subscription versus relying on donations. I understand why people have to do subscription-based content. I totally get it. Like, you got to get paid. I battle with that in regards to, I understand it, but I also don't like the fact that that potentially limits access. And look, it's tough for a lot of people right now. And it always is. And then beyond the people of just potentially whether they can afford it or not, or what, there's also sort of that subscription fatigue. Everybody's got a million subscriptions, and then they get to this point of, I can't do another subscription, even if it's just $1. It's just even the act of doing it just grades on you. And I totally get that part too. So, I'm willing to listen to feedback. Trust me, I've gotten a lot of unsolicited, but super well-meaning advice on what I should do, which is, sometimes funny and also super, again, it's very nice. The people have been great. That have reached out. So, and this is something that I'm not interested in, just in talking about the podcast. I'm not interested in making an entrance fee. That does not good. I have at times thought about, well, is it worth throwing up like a Patreon or something along those lines for people who want to chip in to help out or whatever. And that's certainly an option. Now, obviously, if you're trying to live off that, that's a scary thought process to be like, if you're charging $5 a month or whatever, you need however many people to make that work. You can sort of at least figure out a number. Whether you can get there is one thing, but then the other part of that is if you're relying on donations, it gets very tricky. So I have had preliminary talks with some people, nothing official. Obviously, if I would be more than happy to say if I had done anything. And again, it just comes down to those things. How does that look? Does it full-time, part-time, hobby? And then is it worth it to potentially just do my own thing, even if that means having to do another job or something else? Obviously, I really, really don't want to get a real job for any number of reasons.
A real job. Yes. Come with us.
Well, that's the thing. I've never I certainly downplay my job as being a real job when I had it, just because it does feel like I'm super fortunate. That's how I viewed it, just being super fortunate that I get to do that every day. But I really don't want to have to do that. I suck at the concept of sitting somewhere for 8 hours if I can do the work in 4. That type of thing. Like, I'm not good at that, or just like intentionally slowly working to like make it work. Anyway. It doesn't really matter. But then, obviously that has its own potential issue. Like, does that mean I can't coach, which obviously I would like to keep doing? Or if I don't, then it be on my own terms as opposed to not being able to do it, which would be very disappointing in that regard. So that's sort of where I'm at. If people want to reach out and they're saying, hey, look, I want you to do, I would love if you guys had a Patreon and say, I'd love to support the show and do all these other things. Listen, I'm there for it. The rest of it, we'll see. I'm not ruling anything out at this point. Again, I don't necessarily have to jump right into working again, but at the same time, like, this season is finite. You don't want to get into a situation where people are sort of committed to their budget for the year and you're just sort of out there and then you're sort of losing a season. So there's a lot of different sort of considerations with that. Anyway, so that's my piece on it as far as everything. I'm not interested in ripping SI. I am super grateful that they took a chance on me in the first place. I have gone from asking, can I do this, to what's the way to do this where I can make it financially work, which is a hell of a difference. That means a lot. And certainly the support I got and reinstilled that belief that I can do this, that there's a place for me in this space. Now it's just a question of making the right fit. The least of which, I have no intention of stopping the podcast. Again, I love what I do with Bree. I look forward to this every week, even this week, doing this. Not my favorite thing to do in the world, but like it brings me a lot of joy to do this, to check in with Bree, see how she's doing, all those things that, those are just nice. So that's sort of where that is. Now, I don't know how long we are into this, but hey, the Browns.
There's nothing going on, Pete. Nothing to panic about. Nothing to worry about. Everything's great.
So let's start with the AFC North, because everybody is sort of, and we'll get there with Deshaun Watson's shoulder. Everybody's sort of been sitting there going, well, what do the Browns have to do? And then, holy crap, can the quarterback play? Meanwhile, you had a curious weekend in terms of the NFL, and another weekend where you're sitting there going week to week league. You just see some bizarre games that don't make any sense. And it starts with the Ravens and the Steelers game. The Ravens gagged that game, had every reason.
Just unbelievable.
Should have won that going away, had the game in total control and literally spit the bit at every opportunity. Dropped all those passes, some of which were in the end zone, threw a stupid pick. That was like the one bad thing Lamar Jackson did. You even got the fumble off of Connor Olszewski, who is somehow still in the league. A fumble caused by his own player, technically. And you still lost that game. Like, that was disgusting on so many levels. Meanwhile, you're sitting there the previous week going, I don't know if we can keep up with this. I don't know if we can ever compete with the Ravens. Like, that's
certainly after the first quarter, I was like, wow, this isn't going to be a game. They're going to destroy the Steelers. I still can't believe how that game ended up.
Now, the one thing that brings me some small piece of joy is the Steelers win that game, which sort of works in the sense that now the Browns are, have only played 4 games. So if they were to win next week, they'd all have 3 wins. Like, they'd all be caught up. The thing that brings me a little bit of joy is the fact that the Steelers won that game and they still hate Matt Canada with a passion. They still hate their offense with every fiber of their being. And the Ravens are now pissed. They lost to the Colts. They were pissed about that, and now they just blew this game against their rival. They hate the Steelers with a passion, had the game ready to win, and they just blew it. And this is the problem. The Ravens keep doing this, and they should theoretically be a 5-0 team, and they're sitting here 3-2. They could have a commanding lead in the AFC North, and they don't. And they're sitting there in the mud with the rest of us. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati Bengals, who were in just outright despair for the first 4 weeks of the season, they go and get a win against Arizona. Arizona is not a very good team, although I give them all the credit in the world. They play their guts out endlessly. They give you everything they have. I enjoy watching their offense with former Browns quarterbacks coach Drew Petzing. I enjoy watching it with former Browns quarterback Josh Dobbs, but they're just not very good. And ultimately didn't have enough firepower in that game. And even though I thought Josh Dobbs played reasonably well and the interceptions weren't necessarily his fault, I also didn't come away going, well, if the Browns had Josh Dobbs that week, they would have beaten the Ravens, because the problems go so much deeper than that quarterback position. The Cardinals' offense right now is just functioning better at every level, which is it's obviously the challenge for the Browns. So where are we at? Bengals 2-3, Ravens and Steelers both 3-2. Browns sitting at home watching at 2-2. So here's the problem: the Browns have to play there's all this parity in the NFL, and there's all this any given Sunday element, and then you watch the San Francisco 49ers, who look like a dominant college team, where teams do not touch them; they just roll and roll and roll, and they look incredible. And you're sitting there going, oof, this doesn't look good. I love our defense, and I still don't feel good about it in regards to the 49ers. And that's not even getting to the offense and all those questions I have. That is the thing. That's the challenge for the Browns. And I think in a lot of ways, you sort of look at this game and you go, well, I expect them to lose. So in some ways, they have nothing to lose and should just go for it. Which could be interesting. Obviously, I still think I am genuinely looking forward to the Browns defense matchup against the 49ers offense, because I do really like the Browns defense. And unlike the Cowboys defense, which got picked apart, I think the Browns defense has less holes. Cowboys safeties are not very good. Cowboys are hurt at corner, so they were in trouble. And the 49ers just endlessly put on them, because Kyle Shanahan is very good at finding and exploiting your weakness, which is a credit to him. He's very good at that. Meanwhile, the 49ers defense, their corners are not great. Their safeties are uber aggressive, which is works for what they do. But I don't think they're phenomenal in coverage necessarily. I do think there's opportunities, and the Cowboys showed that at points there are opportunities, but their front seven is the best in the NFL, bar none. The Browns have a phenomenal defensive line. The 49ers is on that same level, and then they have the best linebacker unit in the NFL. So that's the challenge. And the Browns offense has not played well so far this season. They've won games, but even when they've won games, like when they beat the Titans, I still came at that, and we talked about it, sitting there going, yeah, they won, but there's a lot of these things that are just not working. And that is now where they're at, which brings us to what happens this week. The challenge, I think between the bye week and this 49ers game, it offers the Browns a ton of freedom to just commit to whatever changes they're going to make. And you heard a lot between Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, and we'll get to that, about basically leaning into things that work and trying to minimize things that don't, and build on the things that are effective, which is all 100% coach speak and what you'd hear actual coaches say without getting into the specifics of what that means. But that is how they would talk, how I would talk, how our head coach would talk. Like, that's just how that goes, which is good. Now you have to go and do it and lean into figure out what that means, because the Browns have a lot of things to do. It starts with the running game, having one. That would be a start. Equipping running game would be a big deal. And then, going from there. Is that something that's likely going to materialize against the 49ers? I doubt it, just because they're so good. But again, you have a little bit of freedom to just say, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to go for it and see what happens. This is ultimately the way we have to make this change in order to be effective in the long term. We don't have Nick Chubb. We don't have Jack Conklin. So what does it look like? What do we have? What can we make work with what the people we have? And like we talked about last week, I think some of that is legitimately just taking a deep breath and being like, we're trying to do too much. Like Bree made a really good point about pressing. I do think that's a legitimate thing. I also think there's some other things that can happen. I give a little bit of leash to Kevin Stefanski in that when nothing's working, it's very easy to be like, let's try some stuff and see if it works. Even going back to some stuff that I don't think is necessarily a good fit for this team, but it is what it is. So I'm curious to see what they do. I don't necessarily need the Browns to win this game. I just need them to make start making the progress that needs to happen in order to be successful. Now, certainly, if they win this game, that would be huge. Look, again, any given Sunday and all that, even as good as the 49ers are, nothing would make me happier than the Ravens coming off their A game against us, where they were phenomenal, turning in a C to D game against the Steelers. I love the 49ers to do that. That would make me very happy. I feel that would be great. 49ers come in, they're like, I don't know, we're not really feeling this one. I'm with that. Go for it. But I just want to see movement in the right direction.
I'm pretty sure that's where my mindset is at. I was not feeling great after watching the 49ers last night. It's so easy to just be a prisoner in the moment, and watching a team on Sunday Night Football just look completely dominant, really, in all aspects. And then obviously with their coaching staff that they have, it definitely gives them an edge. But on the flip side, the Browns are coming off of a bye. There's absolutely no excuse. Well, maybe one excuse as to why they don't have a chance to win this game. And I hate to be the person that's like, oh, let's just take a moral victory. Even if we don't win, like, let's look good. But at this point, with who this team is that they're facing off against, like, they are a really, really good football team. So like it's going to be really hard to win this football game. And as of right now, we have not seen from this Browns team any type of consistent play, particularly when it comes to the offense. And they cannot go into this game again expecting that their defense has to do everything. Like, that just can't happen. So that's where, like, my confidence level really kind of started to fall, is that I don't have full trust in this team and who they are at this point in time. Not saying that this game is going to define how the rest of the Browns season is going to go. The only thing that I think is the advantage and the benefit is that they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this. So, like, to me, like you said, like, the 49ers team, they're probably not going to go undefeated. Like, that's not going to happen. So, like, say we
Somebody's
catch them.
Get them.
Yeah, like, let's just say, like, we catch them during an off week, or they're a little bit lackluster, or someone gets the stomach bug. It doesn't feel, I don't know. Like, it truly is a week to week business. Like, we've seen, like, the Cincinnati Bengals how they looked in the first 4 games to how they looked this last week. Like anything can happen. And why not the Browns? That's where I'm at. Why not the Browns?
The team that really jumped out at me this week, and I get it, they were in London. It sort of changes something. The Buffalo Bills was like, they were bad. And look, they've got other problems. They have lost a number of key players to injury, like season-ending type injuries, which is, it sucks, but it's also, sort of the nature of the beast. The fact that they had just lost Tre'Davious White, they have quite like they're struggling corner, and then they lose Matt Milano potentially for the season. He's a phenomenal linebacker, and they lost their nose tackle, Daquan Jones. All this happened while their offense did not look great against Jacksonville, even when Josh Allen overall had a good game, and they just were not good enough against the Jags. That's where I sort of look at this, and I look across the league, and I go, there are 31 flawed teams. Unfortunately, number 32 is playing at a super high level, and the Browns play them this week.
Yeah.
The thing I sort of like look at and I go, here's what makes this interesting. And again, it's that Browns defense against the 49ers for all the reasons I just mentioned. They don't have a lot of weaknesses. Now, certainly the 49ers are going to, maybe they will expose them and they will find something will come out of this game going, woof, much like the Cowboys did. But like at the same time, like that could be a really competitive element, is those two sides going at it with the Browns defensive line against the 49ers line that includes Trent Williams, who's a Hall of Famer, and then guys. And then Brock Purdy, who played exceptionally high level football against the Cowboys, but they're like, when they played against the Giants was like rough to start with. They're not, Christian McCaffrey, tremendous. Their tight end who just caught 3 touchdowns, George Kittle, great player. They've got 2 tremendous receivers. Brandon Ayuk is playing, at the peak of his powers and is going to get a massive contract somewhere at some point. And then you have Deebo Samuel. Like that's a lot of work to do. But at the same time, I sit there and I look at the Browns defense and like, there's a part of me that goes, okay, let's see how this goes. Let's see what they do against the, even if at the same time I'm sitting there going, looking at the offense going, oof, I don't love this matchup. I'm not feeling good about much of any of this. But like I said, they have the freedom to sort of lean into some stuff, do some changes, and sort of try to transition into the offense they are going to have to be in order to be successful, for the rest of the season. And look, I make no bones about the fact that I really like Kevin Stefanski. I think he's a good coach. I want him to prove me right in terms of being able to take a team without Nick Chubb, without Jack Conklin, and be able to make them work with the weapons they have, because they do have weapons. I mean, there are people who are certainly down on Elijah Moore, and his usage at times is downright frustrating. Almost immediately after he does something stupid, I will get a text from one Bree, infuriated that they're using him a certain way. And I get it, but I do really like his talent. I do like what he can be. I like Amari Cooper. I'm like everybody else. I want David Njoku to get the ball more. And I'd like to DPJ to do some more things. They have these guys, and I think they can get them going and start getting going. Now, the big X factor all of a sudden, in addition, beyond the offensive line and them playing better, is Deshaun Watson's shoulder.
Oh, wait, I thought you were going to say the weather.
Well, I suppose that could too.
Hey, well, listen, I know it's usually not a benefit for us either, but the fact that they're going to be traveling and it's probably going to be in the 50s, maybe with some rain, like that's going to put a damper on things.
Listen, it might be cold and flu season, and maybe they're going to.
I'm just saying, if someone maybe ate something bad that didn't agree with them and they can't play, like you just never know.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, listen, you never know. Like I said, that's the thing. It's like
a bad burrito, like that could really impact them.
The difference between A-level football in the NFL and C-level football is minutia. It's so small. Whereas you look at college, and, let's use Ohio State, for example, it was uninspiring football for about a half before they figured it out against Maryland. They have that room for error. They can do that against a team like Maryland and figure it out. You can't really do that too often in the NFL. Other than, the Steelers are a perfect example of that. The Ravens should have won that game, but they played crappy football for too long and allowed the other team to make the most of the opportunity and win. That's the challenge. Is it's really difficult to be that good that long. And then there's the question of, are the 49ers peaking too early? Now, it didn't really help us since that'll be it after this week, but that is certainly an interesting question. Are they going to sort of experience a little bit of a fall back to earth, sort of like what the Dolphins have felt the last couple of weeks, even though they've won one of those games, that they've made more mistakes. They've been, after everybody proclaimed them the greatest offense of all time, and even though their numbers still support some of those things, that they weren't as explosive as they on the scoreboard as they'd like to be. Deshaun Watson's shoulder. He did not practice. We're recording this on Monday. He did not practice on Monday. One of the hosts of this show is very concerned. The other host, me, is willing to wait until Wednesday before I get super worried about it.
All right. Okay. Listen, let me.
You may be right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that's the difference of opinion.
Well, let me just explain why I feel the way that I feel. So obviously we know how the last week played out leading up to the Baltimore game, where nothing was really discussed or talked about. And then all of a sudden he practices, throws a couple of balls on Friday, and then he walks away from the trainer. And then everyone knows he wasn't a go on Sunday. And then all the weird things came out post-game just about how he was medically cleared, but Deshaun didn't feel like he could throw the ball down the field. And that became the reason, and he ultimately decided. Then it kind of felt like some things were walked back from like Kevin Stefanski. Andrew Berry was asked about it in his press conference, and I know we will get to more of that in a little bit. So now we're going into this week, and I'm fully expecting that there's not going to be a shoulder issue this week, that there was a full 2 weeks of rest. I know that there was the reports of the fluid in his shoulder, which hasn't really been confirmed or denied. Like there hasn't been an actual release of what exactly is wrong from the Cleveland.
Which we're not going to get based on what happened last week.
You definitely not going to be getting more than, I mean, Kevin was very mum today.
You got nothing.
So me feeling panicked last night watching the 49ers play, prisoner of the moment, Bree, then wakes up on Monday morning thinking like feeling still pretty doom and gloom. Then I get into like the hour of 9 a.m. and I'm starting to get into like, now I'm going to start to convince myself that the Browns have a shot. And so I'm like getting into that mindset. Like Pete, you see this like week in and week out, like where I start. And
I do it too. I'm more quiet about it than you.
Yes. Yeah, so
I started last night. In fact, I started giving you reasons.
Listen, you just like plant these seeds, these seeds of just hope.
Some of that is to hedge off I'm quitting the podcast.
Listen, that's never going to change.
I was going to get even just as watching the 49ers game, I was just going to get a text. The Browns weren't even playing. They weren't even active that week. I was just going to get. I'm quitting the podcast after watching this 49ers game.
Yeah, I wasn't the only one feeling this way. There were so many others. So I'm in like the 9 a.m. hour of like convincing myself that the Browns are going to be able to win this football game. And I'm starting to like go over all the reasons why in my head, mind you. I'm like driving into work and I'm like voice texting Pete, probably like sentences that don't make sense because my phone can't translate all of my Cleveland Browns thoughts into things that make sense. But Pete somehow translated them. So then I get the news that Deshaun didn't practice. And then, so I immediately am like, I was just convincing myself, may have just put a tweet out about it. And now I feel like I have to now walk backwards as to, oh boy, like not feeling confident after what we just watched with DTR against the Ravens. I don't know how the Browns have any shot in hell of winning this game if Deshaun isn't going to play. I know I'm a bit premature in, we don't know if Deshaun's going to play or not, right? Wednesday will be a better indicator of if he will be a go for Sunday. However, where my mind is right now is trying to psychoanalyze Deshaun Watson's head and where he's at through all of this. And so we know that up until this point, Deshaun has been, I think, probably under expectations in terms of how he wants to perform, how what the fans want to see from him. You know, he had a good game against the Titans. That's really all we have to go off of. And then he didn't play against the Ravens. And so I'm sitting here thinking like, there is so much pressure for Deshaun Watson to be that guy. Obviously, this is why the Browns paid him that amount of money. Like, this is what he signed up for. Like, this is it. There is pressure. Like, there is pressure. It's there.
Pressure he has never shied away from, by the way.
Exactly. to have that pressure while also being injured, while also not living up to the hype quite yet, is where I feel like there is maybe more hesitation from his perspective and his angle.
Possible.
And so not only is it I have to play through an injury and not feeling 100%, which by the way, I know he's done before. Like it was brought up all last week about how tough of a guy Deshaun is, how he's played being injured before. And yeah, all of that is true. However, you couple this injury with his mental state and not playing up to his expectations, I do feel like it's very, very different from where he was when he was injured in Houston and then even like back in college. I worry about that. So if he goes out there on Sunday against a really, really good football team, mind you, not being 100% healthy and starts off like really slow or shaky, or maybe it's even just the mental hurdles to overcome, like it's going to be in the back of his mind that I don't feel 100%. I'm worried about getting injured. I'm going to make bad decisions. I'm not playing like that's not a good space to be in either. So that's where I feel like I don't know Deshaun personally, obviously. I don't know his circle. I know nothing about this. This is me just kind of playing. I'm trying to be Deshaun Watson and what could possibly be going through his mind.
So let's take the past this week we've just gone through and playing out this week we're about to go into. Best case scenario, worst case scenario. All right. Which one do you want to start with?
Okay, so can I just say one more thing before we do that? I don't have full confidence in this team, in how they're managing this whole situation either. Like that's also where I'm just like, I don't
worst case.
Okay, so then we'll start worst case.
Okay, worst case scenario. For one, it was Evan Washburn that reported for CBS that there was fluid around the rotator cuff. So that's obviously a factor in this. Worst case scenario. Deshaun Watson's shoulder injury is worse than we think. Obviously, the Browns, I do believe that Kevin Stefanski's language being guarded had more to do with not providing any clarity as opposed to providing a weird amount of clarity then sort of just spirals into a weird zone of speculation, even though we're sort of there already. And then Andrew Berry sort of saying, we feel good that it's a short term. Short term is not, a deadline. You know what I mean? That's the worst case in terms of injury. It's a bigger, even though it's not, there's nothing that suggests that if there's fluid around the rotator cuff, which can be caused by a bruise, just bursitis can cause this, that it's a lingering injury that goes on, let's say another week or few. Like that is bad. Obviously, the Browns can't just keep dumping games, even if you think the 49ers game is an okay game to lose, I do. You also need him to be there for when they play the Colts and the Seahawks and these other teams. That is a bad situation. That other possibilities with that worst case scenario, Deshaun Watson has been changed by the money. I'm not suggesting that is true or not. I'm just laying out the possibilities that $230 million in the bank changes your perspective. Or I should say it can change your perspective. At what point does that become I don't know if I'm I don't know if I need to get as beat up or whatever, because I've already sort of made sure I've gotten what I'm getting paid. I don't have to kill myself. They have to pay me regardless. I'm not as in as I was before I got this contract in terms of football. I tend to doubt that's a real thing. I'm not saying that he's not conscious of the fact that what this injury would mean. I mean, I think if you had fluid around his rotator cuff, it would legitimately limit his throwing motion, and that's a real thing. But let's say if he felt 80% of what he was capable of doing, he would have played. And then, or in previous years, maybe that number was lower, that he would have played through anything. And maybe he's a little more conscious, not only, but for all the reasons you brought up, having this contract being what it is and all the pressure that comes with it, and feeling like I have to play well if I'm going to play, because if I play poorly and I'm hurt, it's like a double whammy. The other part of the worst case scenario is that teammates have the same transactional relationship that the fans do. That even as much as they may love Deshaun for taking them to island vacations and all these other things that realistically they're sitting there thinking, if the $230 million quarterback's not playing, like, what are we doing? And does he want to play? Are they sitting there thinking that? And that may not be a team-wide thing. That may be just a couple of individuals, and it could just be in the heat of the moment. But the fact that that thought would even be there would be part of the worst case scenario. And then obviously attached to that would be the team mismanaging it in terms of, messaging, in terms of expectations, in terms of the relationship between the quarterback and the coaching staff and the organization as a whole, in terms of they don't necessarily trust each other despite effectively being married, that they are in a bad way already, and it's week 5, which would be an outright disaster. Those to me are the worst case scenario. And in that scenario, he doesn't throw at all this week. We come to Wednesday, he's still not throwing. He comes to Friday, he's still not throwing. And ultimately it's DTR out there or PJ Walker out there for week 5. That is the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, the Browns medical staff is really, really good. They've got an exceptional track record. Players trust. You've heard any number of players praise them endlessly in terms of the amount of care they get, rehab, and all the other things, from Jack Conklin to Sione Takitaki to any number of players who have said they've been with me the whole time, not only in terms of, the rehab stuff, but just support and being, keeping me going and all those other things. That would lend credibility their ability to sort of handle the situation. The only thing that's sort of funky is that with fluid or whatever, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor. I don't know how long it typically takes for this to dissipate in terms of fluid around. If that means they need to go in and sort of drain it and then do a cortisone shot, if that means just sort of letting it play out and see how it goes. We have no information as to far as how that goes. And I don't know if that's sort of a hit or miss element where you're sort of it's a guessing game and you're just sort of hoping this dissipates, and Deshaun's doing everything that's supposed to be happening and it's just not working. That's the sort of element I don't know. But continuing with the best case scenario, he comes out, the medical staff has basically decided, listen, and organization, this would be a combined decision, and with Deshaun, and basically said, look, we wanted him to get the full week off. We have a program for him to do these things to get right. And in order to make sure he's got the full arm strength, full mobility, full everything, it makes more sense for him to sit out Monday and Tuesday. Well, they're off Tuesday. Monday, come back Wednesday, get 2 full days to continue to recover and then come out. Part of that best case scenario is, as much as Deshaun Watson is certainly an important part of the offense, that they use that Monday to basically just endlessly focus on figuring out what the transition is they're going to make on the running game and saying, these are the things we're going to do. And we're going to do this over and over and over and over and over again until we feel good about it relative to where they are in the week. Deshaun's ultimately fine. We sort of move on and we sort of forget about this. Even if he doesn't play well and the Browns don't play well, he shows progress in terms of just gaining more understanding. Again, Breeze 1,000% right that the only game he's played well in is the Titans game. I do say, and I did say at the time, I thought he was doing some things in the Bengals game that were good with his eyes and stuff, but that the ball just was like a giant soaking wet center block and it just wasn't going where it's supposed to go, even though he saw it well. Steelers game was an abomination. So that's sort of where we're at. And then from the locker room standpoint, maybe things were thought in the heat of the moment, but ultimately they're just frustrated and competitive and want to win, and they want their best shot to do that. There's a feeling of pressure that everybody wants to do what they're going to do, be effective, win, put their best foot out there. Because, in talking about pressing from the offensive standpoint, that's because they all want to win. They all want to be good. They all want to be everything we all want them to be. And sometimes you just push a little too hard. That to me is sort of the best case scenario. And then along with those things, everybody's on the same page. Everybody, even as clunky as the messaging was through this whole thing. And again, I come back to the fact, I know people are sitting there going, Kevin Stefanski's sort of throwing Deshaun Watson under the bus. I don't see it that way. I think ultimately the player has to tell you he's good to go. You're not going to shove him out there and be like, no, you're playing no matter what. Go die. if that's what it takes to, to make this happen. I think part of the reason Kevin Stefanski has respect from his players and they do play for him is because he does talk and listen to them and have that relationship where he trusts what they say. And he said as much. That's the part I think got lost in that whole dialogue, is the fact that Kevin Stefanski, much like he did with Baker Mayfield in 2021, and we can all remember how that didn't go as well. So ultimately said, I trust my guys to make those calls, because you have to. It's a partnership in that regard. You can't just be like, you're a robot, get out there. So that to me is the best case scenario. Now, where does the truth lie? I have no idea, but that's why I'm sort of willing to say I'm not that hung up about Monday, as much as it would have been great for him to come out and everybody go, oh, he's fine, he's throwing, and we look great, and we all feel good about getting prepared this week. Wednesday is the day where I would make that transition and go, I am concerned 100%.
I feel like even your best case scenario had like negative vibes, Pete.
Well, I mean, listen, nature of injuries. I mean, there are very few where you're sitting there going, I feel good about this situation. They've got other guys who are hurt. I mean, the Joel Bitonio one's the one that's the strangest. Ultimately, I never worry about Joel Bitonio, although they're not playing super well. Is the undisclosed, he's working through something, does not make. Yeah, that's the one that scares the crap out of me.
Why is this always a thing with the Browns? Why?
Well, that's every team, but yes, go ahead.
I just listen. I'm going to be shocked. Maybe I shouldn't be. I'm going to be shocked if they come out on Sunday. I don't care who is playing. If they look completely uninspired and flat, things are not going to be well. Things are not going to be well, Pete. I'm not saying they have to win this football game, but like, you got to look a certain way.
I agree. And if they don't, I know what text I'm getting.
I'm resigning.
Yes. I know that text is coming. Yeah, that's the other part. I
sound so emotionally unstable. I swear I'm fine. I'm really fine.
Well, you did label yourself a psycho yesterday, even though I was. No, that was today.
That was me trying to voice text psychoanalyzing.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
No, I can look up the tweet. I'm fairly sure it just said, I'm a psycho.
You didn't even defend my honor. You weren't even like, no, you're not. You're great.
I said, if that makes you a psycho, I'm here for it. Okay, yeah, okay, psycho, analyzing.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know why. I'm telling you, the voice to text grammar, like you have to like take it with a grain of salt.
Because I thought all your questions were relevant and your points were valid. Yeah, so like that's where we're at, and it sucks. It's really uncomfortable to be in this situation with this quarterback, and like at the same time, you sit there, look around, you're like, well, at least we're not the Colts with their rookie quarterback who's already been hurt 3 times, and I feel awful for him. And I'm getting Courtney Brown vibes, not in the sense that this means that his career is doomed. Just the fact that you look at this guy and you're like, he's a giant. He looks indestructible, and just his body's not cooperating. And there are a number of other quarterback situations that are not great either in terms of health and other stuff. And so there's sort of this element of uncertainty with that. But like there are certainly players where we would be freaked out if they were hurt. Legitimately, but it's just different with the quarterback. It's 1,000% different. Like I mean, we would freak out if Myles Garrett had a real injury.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's different. It's just different because, like, whether you had Josh,
it's also very magnified. Just like with everything surrounding him, exactly. Like, sure, like when Baker Mayfield was dealing with the injury a couple of years ago, it was a really intense situation, and Brown's Twitter was distraught over everything. And the Browns, I think, took a lot of heat for how they handled that situation. But I think this just feels very different because of the situation that we are in as fans. And we talked about this after they lost against the Steelers, where everything is just under a magnifying glass. And even as fans, like it's like everything is said to us and done in such a personal way, as if we had anything to do with any of this. And so like him being injured and the Browns and how they're handling the situation, like it's just messy. It just feels very messy.
And as you keep pointing out rightly, we don't know what he is still.
Yeah. It's just, and I think that's what it is. It just, for people that are rooting very hard against this team and against him specifically, like this is exactly what they want to see. They want to see the Browns pretty much be in shambles, and they think that the Browns deserve this, and us as fan base like deserve this. And it's so unfair to be in the situation as a fan of this team because, again, like we are just rooting for the football team that we like and that we've always enjoyed watching. And I hate being like in these situations, and it feels so silly to say that, but like again, I don't know what to say anymore. It's just a new kind of I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's like a new kind of frustration.
Yeah, I mean, let's say the Browns are still 2-2, but Deshaun Watson was great for 4 games. I think it certainly would be like, okay, once we get Deshaun back, we'll be fine, even if we have to take a couple lumps. The fact that we don't makes that to your point, magnifies the whole situation. We don't know what he is, and he's out, and he's in this situation.
Yeah.
And does this affect his play? Are we going to be sitting here going,
right.
Are we going to be watching on Sunday going, is that because Deshaun Watson is not playing to a certain level, or is that because of his shoulder?
Right. And just like how it was weather, it just nothing has been clean.
Yes, 100%. So I agree with you. And that it is incredibly frustrating that we're constantly having to do this. And again, some of this is just shit happens. And that's the nature of the NFL season. You sort of have to deal with it. I guess I take the one thing I will say about Kevin Stefanski so far. You remember last year when the Browns lost to the Jets, and the press conference Kevin Stefanski had, where you could see it on him for being stoic, and you could see it on his face about how bad that loss was and how important it was for them to come out and beat the Steelers.
Yeah,
I don't see that stress on him, which doesn't mean they're good. Doesn't mean that things are going to work out, but I don't see that same level of just, it was clear at that point. You're like, wow, he understands the pressure on him. They need to go out and win this game. And ultimately they did. And, sort of things stabilized a little bit, but I do look at, I don't see that on him. And I do think that is something. I'm rooting for him. I want to see him get things going on offense because I do think there's talent there. I do think there's ways to get this thing going. And for all the reasons I keep saying, week to week league, you keep seeing teams play completely different just every week, whether some teams, whether they're home, whether on the road, some teams it's a roll of the dice. Right now, the Browns are a roll of the dice, other than the fact that the defense is phenomenal. I mean, that's the one thing that gives you endless amounts of ability to sort of see where this thing goes. Because even if Deshaun Watson were to miss some time, which we do not want, the defense is so good that they can actually sort of absorb that in the same way the Steelers have. Like, it's weird that we're almost like mirror images.
Oh, it's annoying.
Of the Steelers in that
I hate
way, which their fans are not having a good time and they're 3-2. Anyway, so let's get to Andrew Berry. In some of what I said today about my own situation was taking a little bit of a note from Andrew Berry. I really like Andrew Berry, and I thought that was a fabulous press conference from Andrew Berry in giving a really good overview of this whole team. And I like the fact that he took the time to sort of make his big sort of speech in terms of what he thinks is working, because there are a lot of things working on this team, as much as we hyper focus on things that aren't. Like nature of the beast, you look at what's wrong and you're going, well, how do we fix it? That he did take times to say, like, all these things are going well on the defense, and JOK and Grant Delpit and Myles Garrett and all these other things are working well, and that they do believe in what they have and all these other things. I thought that was awesome. And I saw one reporter, Hayden Grove, actually say that based on the press, I don't think he meant it this way. It's just the way the tweet came out. That based on this press conference, I think he's a GM that can be here for the next few decades. Again, I'm going to assume that Hayden Grove is basing that on the not just the press conference, but his body of work. Which is, just to be fair to him. But I do think it was sort of like that big of a deal. But the press conference itself, in terms of the questions, was so bizarre to me, because there were people who asked really good questions. Terry Pluto asked really good questions. Dan Lobby asked really good questions. And, there were others who asked really good questions. And then there was this element of just being combative is the word I would use for what I was looking at. And the form of combativeness took the form in asking the GM coaching questions.
Yeah. That was interesting.
Which is just, well, it's infuriating because you get two or three press conferences for the season, and you're wasting it on the one that drove me the most up the wall at the time. I was infuriated. Like that was the time I wish I could had a job and could be writing about this, because I would have gone off on this. A certain man who is orange asked Andrew Berry, well, you knew you were going to have you had a rookie quarterback. Why didn't you game plan to run the ball more? One, that is a question an 8-year-old reporter asks. Like the child reporter comes and goes, why didn't you run the ball more? That is, to me, is akin to going and watching the Cavs say, oh, they've got a rookie point guard, rookie shooting guard, whatever. Donovan Mitchell's out and they've got a rookie in there, and not going, why didn't you dunk more? Because it's stupid. It's a disservice to your audience. It's not just stupid to Andrew Berry, who, responded to the question professionally, more professionally than I would have. It's as if the Browns should have written a note and said to the Ravens, or when Kevin Stefanski met with John Harbaugh at midfield and go, we're supposed to run the ball, right? Like the defense has agency in this. They don't have to let you do anything. And there's this unwillingness to sort of accept. And I know he hates analytics, but he can watch the game and go, the offensive line is getting no movement. The running game is going nowhere. And you're really saying to me, well, they should have just kept handing the ball off. I mean, that would have worked eventually. I mean, after all, you had to. They would just tire out from kicking your ass. Like that, again, it does a disservice to everyone. And there's ways to ask that question. I'll give you an example. Melissa Stark on Sunday Night Football, coming out of the half, and I don't remember which coach she was asking. I think it was the Cowboys, and going, what do you have to do to run the ball more consistently? That's it. And even that should be aimed at the head coach. But at least that's a question where you're giving somebody an avenue and not just being like registering your distaste with a game that was already played. Andrew Berry has no ability to go back and do anything about. And it just comes off as being like a prick for the sake of being a prick. And I know he's employed because there's an audience for this. And there are people who have that element of
they tap into that.
They want a reporter to go be a prick to these people. And they will tell you that's
what they make their living off of, for sure.
Power or whatever. But if you really want to make that point, there are so many better ways to ask that question that would still get the same point, not just being like, disgusted at the fact that they had a rookie quarterback and you didn't try to run the ball more. Like I watched them not run the ball effectively. Like how many times would have been satisfying to be like 30 times to just run it into nothing? Would have been 20 times? Like what is the number of times that we can go, the running game is not working, and we give no credit to the Ravens being able to say, hey, they've got a rookie quarterback. You're never going to run the ball. We're going to make DTR throw it to beat us. And that's so sad that we keep having this conversation. Those type of things, just again, it's you could have the kid reporter ask that question and it would sound thoughtful, but you're a grown-ass man who's been doing this for 70 years, 80. Like when did the Browns start playing? 1946. Has he been covering the team since 1946?
Maybe.
Ask questions that make sense. Ask a question that the GM can answer that's going to be relevant to him, because ultimately, and I give Andrew Berry credit because he played ball, because he could have been like, and I think in some ways he sort of did. It was like, I'm not going to get into coaching game plan because I'm not the coach.
Well, not to mention that he hit the press conference off with a long monologue, and he gave fair warning to that. I did appreciate how he talked about, he not only was it a bye week for the team to really reflect on what they need to do better and what they need to change, but he also kind of took that same mindset and approach for him as a general manager and being more open with the media in these press conferences and really kind of self-reflecting on his job and he admitted that speaking is not his favorite part about the job, and doing these sessions, and how he was going to be more open about all of it. So it's just funny because that question came with Andrew like kicking off the entire press conference with saying that. So I just thought that was just interesting overall, that he was pretty open from the first few minutes of this, and then you still kind of got the same. They just weren't well thought out, I guess, is how I would describe some of the questions that he got.
Well, as I said, some were great. Some were great. There were awesome questions that allowed him to be a GM. But there are some questions you're asking him to be a coach, and he's not going to do that.
Well, and I do feel like the reason that those questions are being asked is because the headline and wanting to report out if there's any if they're not on the same page. And that to me is actually bothersome, where it's like then trying to pit like, oh, there's internal strife, like, are Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski really aligned, and so that to me is like, it's not like we don't need that storyline to go along with everything else. It's already
from a man who suggested that that DePodesta is calling the plays, tells Kevin Stefanski he's not allowed to do certain things. Man, it's just incredibly frustrating because it's so stupid and nonsensical. And it's a shame because there's genuinely an audience for that. And here's the thing. That was a 41-minute press conference. And at one point, Andrew Berry stopped PJB and said, no, I want there are more people with their hands up. I will take all the questions.
Yeah.
He made an effort to get everybody questions answered, which I thought was good. And look, there are questions that I don't necessarily agree with, but are at least valid relative to him, which is basically saying, do you still have the same level of trust with Kevin Stefanski and all those things like that? At least that's a question that's fair to answer for him. You're not asking him to coach the team. You're asking him a question about and you know what the answer is going to be, but it's a question you can argue, well, they have to ask it based on this. But it just felt like with certain people who have had an axe to grind that the Browns are 1-3 or 0-4, not 2-2. He asked about how bummed are you that you lost to the Ravens? You can't get that one back. What is it's just that stuff it's a waste of everyone's time. And it's such a shame because there are better questions to ask to get real thoughtful answers. I thought he, was very, open in talking about Jedrick Wills and some of the things to tackle and, DeJuan Jones and all these other things. And, was big on emphasizing turnovers, which is 100% a coach thing to say, which is they're -7 in the turnover differential. That's a way to be a losing football team. And the Browns are fortunate in that regard that they're, 2-0. They've lost the turnover battle in every game. I wish we wouldn't have to do this every time because it's just a shame that you, as I said, you get so few opportunities to talk to him, get questions that can be about process or what you're trying to do. And look, you can ask and believe that trading Josh Dobbs was a mistake and sit there and go, well, they shouldn't have traded him because of what happened. I think, there may come a game later in the year where if Deshaun Watson's out for some reason, and hopefully that doesn't happen, where the structure of the offense is sound enough where you can actually make the argument and say, well, if Josh Dobbs is here, they win this game. And maybe DTR will be better in that scenario. But if there is a game where the rest of the offense functions, but in this particular game, there was no saving this offense from itself. It was just bad in every way. DTR certainly made it worse. And there's certainly elements that were, exacerbated by his presence. And, in some ways you didn't have a chance the second he was mentioned for the game, but I don't think any of those things would have changed with Josh Dobbs, a move that was universally praised when they traded him at the time because nobody wanted him to play. And we've talked about this, but if Josh Dobbs started that game and sucked, everybody would have been saying, why didn't we play DTR? He was so good in preseason. Didn't you watch preseason? Look how good he was in preseason. If you'd start PJ Walker, who has started 5 games in the NFL and had some success, or maybe more than 5. But anyway, he's had experience starting in the NFL and he sucked. Well, why didn't you play DTR? You're a moron. You should be fired for not putting DTR in the game. All these things, these choices have natural consequences. And as he mentioned himself, hindsight is 2020, and you can and criticize this. And maybe there's an argument to be made that they should have done more at the veteran quarterback. But here's the thing: if that was the case, if you were really worried about it, it still probably wasn't Dobbs. It was probably somebody else. And you could make the argument maybe they should have kept Jacoby Brissett, but the Browns didn't want to run multiple offenses. They wanted to have one offense that all the quarterbacks can run. And maybe DTR is not good, or maybe DTR is just a rookie in his first start against a difficult defense. I'm inclined to basically look at it and go, first game ever. I thought DTR's press conference was interesting in terms of how he viewed it and relaying it to how he started at UCLA, which was really interesting, and what immediately something I thought of during the game when it was happening. I still think he's got a ton of talent. I just think it's going to take time because he's a quarterback in the NFL. And even though we can look at CJ Stroud and go, wow, CJ Stroud is really good, and he is, that's not necessarily realistic, especially not realistic for a guy who's a 5th-round pick, not the 2nd overall pick in the draft.
My only hope through all of this, though, Pete, is that if, depending on what happens with Deshaun and the rest of this week and how it plays out, is that I hope that DTR is better prepared come Sunday if he has to start. And whatever they are talking about this week and game planning and all that stuff, that there are answers for what is going to be a stout defense that he's going to face, even more so than the Ravens.
Yes, and as I've said, I didn't like the game plan they had. I wish there was other things that they had done. I wish there were more screens. I wish there were more.
Exactly.
So yes, 100%. That was the offense's worst game plan of the year. It's also the defense's worst game plan of the year. They got beat. I mean, they just got their ass kicked. It happens, unfortunately, in the NFL, and that's something they've got to get past. But I respect the fact that DTR showed a ton of poise in just who he is as a person. Would have been very easy for him to go in that press conference and basically like fold up and just want to disappear. And he didn't. He faced. I would
have cried probably right then.
Yeah. I mean, it was all, I mean, listen,
I would have cried. I honestly would have. And not to mention you have fans booing you. And I know that they weren't booing him specifically. It was just all the booing. There's been a lot of booing this year. A lot of booing around the NFL. Like fans are fed up. Why are we booing so much? Like what's happening? I hate booing our own team. Like let's not.
I hate it. I'm not a booer. I'm just not somebody who does that. At the same time, like
boo the refs if you're mad at them. No, like the Amari Cooper, like yes. When he didn't step out, like fine, like boo, but like, can we not boo our own team?
I wish that was the case. It's just the problem is, as you know, people pay a lot of money to go to this.
I understand, but like, okay, you're not getting your money back by booing. Like, what is that solving?
True. I mean, like I said, I get
then don't go. Like, if you're gonna be disappointed and you feel like you're gonna boo, like go boo at your TV.
I wish that was a policy.
Maybe we gotta do an entire podcast just based on booing.
Again, it's just not something I do. I just don't have that gene in me where I'm ever thought to myself booing.
Well, okay, I just like think about like I try to like think about like, well, wasn't this the infamous tweet from Jed Wills about like going and booing? What did he say again? This was like booing.
This is the problem.
I don't boo at your job.
Yes, well, he couldn't just leave it at I don't boo at your job.
Yeah.
He made himself look like an ass when he said, like either work in the cash register at the grocery store or something else.
He had to, like, it was very like passive aggressive. Yeah.
Where it became now, not only is it
like millionaire,
you couldn't just leave it at jobs. Now it's you're suggesting they're less than.
Yeah. That was probably in poor taste.
Yes, that
part. I don't think his point was helped by his comparison.
If he just left it at I wouldn't come boo you at your job, he would have been fine.
Exactly. It would have been.
Made it into a problem by
I'm better than you. I make way more money.
Yes, yeah. He made it
you guys, you don't matter. Like
made it into a class issue, and he's never going to win that battle.
Yeah. Especially in Cleveland. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, ultimately, we are left with. I mean, the only way you can look at this week beyond, the Deshaun Watson thing is you look at the San Francisco 49ers and you go, this is an opportunity. One way or the other, it's an opportunity. It's either an opportunity to go out and, upset the world type thing and bring a massive dub, which everybody would immediately put the Browns in the Super Bowl if they get, even if it's ugly sin. or
Yeah, go win ugly. I don't care.
Or it just allows you to make progress that ultimately sets you up for success for the rest of the season, even if you lose. That is how you have to approach this game. They are an overwhelming favorite for all the right reasons, and the Browns have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, the Browns are the underdog. I'm okay with that. And just go out there and let's set the tone in a good way, in a positive way.
Now, to your booing point, I would hope that based on what we've seen from this team, who has beat the brakes off everybody they've played, including the Steelers, including the Cowboys, and that we aren't immediately like screaming at the Browns because they're getting if they start losing to a team that is just phenomenal. I mean, they're just a phenomenal football team. But like I said,
I don't know. There may be a lot of 49ers fans there that are drowning out the booing.
That could be true as well. But yeah. Anyway, overall, look, podcast not going anywhere. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, all that good stuff. And look, as far as both the podcast and myself are concerned, I'm interested in your feedback. I'm interested in what people think as far as like viability in terms of potentially making this into more of a solo venture, expanding on that, or just thoughts on supporting the podcast or just the work in general and stuff like that. As I said, I love doing this. I hope to continue being able to do this as long as possible. I just want to make sure it's a way where I can feasibly do it and continue to bring the content that at least some portion of people, including Bree's mom through very many email addresses, is a fan of. Like, it does. Thank you to all the people who reached out. It does mean the world to me. Certainly. Thank you, Bree, for all of it. It does mean a great deal to me. And I will, given the opportunity, I'm going to continue to try to bring as much content and try to do the things that I've been doing, hopefully get better at them, and just be able to do the things that sort of have allowed me to talk to you in this capacity and continue to do that. So again, thank you to everybody, but we will be back next week. At least one of us will be. We'll see how far Bree gets into the game. But other than that, thank you for listening, and we'll see what happens.